Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very warm welcome to yet another episode of Pathways. And I'm Tahir Dhindsa and you are watching TD Digital. CPEC is a lifeline. It seems that the government of Pakistan is waiting, and the Prime Minister has rightly said that after 60 years, 2 dams are being built, and the CPEC, which is equivalent to the Industrial Revolution of 60, is on its way. And one should wait. And it's very important for Pakistan as far as the economy and even defense. But there are perceptions, and the perception linger on during the phase 2 as well. We have today with us a very eminent and important guest who is an insider, who knows, he's a research fellow and he knows what has been going on because of his chance to rub his shoulder with the policymakers. Dr. Vaqar, very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Doctor, what do you say on this perception? Has CPEC slowed down?
Well, I think to start with, the perception is not totally correct.
All right. But partially it is correct.
Yes, partially, of course, there are reasons that make it correct, of course. First, of course, you have seen that past few months have been, of course, there have been suffering due to COVID. There have been travel restrictions, restrictions of movement of people, merchandise, of course. And that has sort of contributed to sluggishness in overall growth, apart from, of course, areas around other ancillary sectors that were supposed to be part of CPEC portfolio, including the cultural cooperation. The other issue is that after successful completion of the early harvest program of CPEC,
which was to the left of the Indus.
That's right. And of course, there was an energy portfolio which was successfully delivered in the early harvest. The second phase essentially relies on the capacities and willingness of the private sector on both sides. There are special economic zones which are being built, of course. Then, of course, you have
JVs.
Joint ventures are being, of course, strengthened or forged. But I think when you talk about B2B arrangements, these in any case take longer time than G2G arrangements. And for their business persons to come over here, or for Pakistani business persons to go and move into China freely, currently, of course, the pandemic is certainly not making it easier. Second, I think China is also looking towards Pakistan to put in place a more medium-term economic growth framework. And this medium-term economic growth framework is necessary at this point because up until now, you were and still are under the fund program. And there are certain, of course, contours of that fund program that act as conditionality, as prior conditions, which needed to be achieved before you can allow those growth.
All right. We have seen that MTBF and Sulaiman Shah and, on those days, but those were primarily numbers. What is that medium term? Because the numbers we cannot rely now.
Yes. So basically, you see, once you have stabilized the economy, you need to give a direction to not just your own private sector, but also to foreign investor.
Right.
May it be Chinese FDI or non-Chinese FDI. They need to understand which key sectors government of Pakistan, of course, would be prioritizing in the medium term. Which key sectors would be backed by stronger policy measures, policy facilitation measures, and there'll be certainty of policy, And that's when the investors go into this sector. You are now seeing a very decent interest in, for example, real estate, construction, housing, on the back of certain policy measures which the government has given. Even Chinese investors are interested. So a holistic medium-term growth policy.
Has government prioritized this? Because in phase 2, we hear of agriculture and international coordination and all that. So has government finalized?
Yes. So in the CPEC priority sectors, for example, construction, real estate are there. You are also now seeing some new sectors such as tourism development. So it's heartening to know because these are the sectors which sort of relate more to communities and job creation. They're pro labor, And this is probably the way to go because
And manufacturing and agriculture?
yes. So in case of agriculture, the focus would be on corporatization of agriculture, and this has been mentioned in the CPEC long-term plan as well. In case of manufacturing, all special economic zones have given their own priority sectors. So Rashakai, Faisalabad, Dhabeji, all of them, if you go to their website, according to their own endowments, their own vision of the provincial government, they have given their own priority sectors. From our point of view, and my personal opinion, of course, these sectors should be export oriented.
All right. Yes.
And for the longer term, it is essential that Bolan or Dhabeji or Rashakai, whatever the provincial government's vision is, unless you have focus on exports, these SEZs won't be connected with the growth nodes abroad.
Yeah, of course. Excuse me. We were talking about agriculture, but corporate agriculture we have seen in India. Do you think it would be very difficult here as well?
Yes. So what we have seen
Punjab,
is
India.
Yes, you're right. What we have seen is that it cannot be imposed by the government.
All right.
It has to be organically sort of nurtured and owned by
It should implode.
by the farmers themselves. Unless they organize into communities of practice, into communities of knowledge sharing, until that time, of course, the model doesn't work. That's one.
It's difficult.
It is difficult. The other is that if the government wants to intervene, it should intervene in areas where agriculture market fails. For example, in case you find that there would be sectors in Western Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or Balochistan where agriculture markets in theory and practice do not exist, that's where you can go and sort of implement.
Pakistan is building 2 dams after 60 years. And the prime beneficiaries, one of the prime beneficiaries, Balochistan, Nasirabad and all, that virgin land, if corporatization goes there, do you think there would be difficulties? Because there'd be the incoming investment would be eyeing the taxpayer money spent on the dams.
Absolutely. And I think this is where our boards of investment, Federal Board of Investment, Provincial Boards of Investment, need to be careful that whosoever comes into investing in agriculture value chains, there should be specific clauses to protect local communities, for local hiring of labor, for example. Some people feel that these are too restrictive conditions for investment agreements, but in my personal opinion, if you want to create ownership for these projects, this is the way to go. And to a large extent in Gwadar, we have done this.
Yeah.
In Gwadar, you see a lot of local labor being employed.
Yeah. Yes. Let's come to the putting your act together. Who are the ministries? That is the Planning Commission and Trade and Commerce and Federal Board of Revenue and all. Is there any other important ministry or a player or institution?
I think, Tahir Sahib, this is something very important which you have now hinted towards, that what is the institutional framework which is going to drive, propel?
Are they preparing a framework?
That's where I want to come to. That this is my concern, unfortunately, that we are not hearing a consensus-driven voice going forward, So somebody has to be, for example, within the government, somebody has to be the face of this vision. And China, Pakistan...
Who do you think should be the face of
Yes. So I just...
Federal government or who?
Federal government. You see, because you have to drive a national program.
All right.
And as I've been always saying, that China-Pakistan cooperation is not just about CPEC. It is much bigger than CPEC,
Obviously.
And somebody has to protect this relationship. Somebody has to strengthen this relationship. Now, you talked of, in your introduction, you very rightly talk of the 1960s. In the 1960s, who was driving that development? You had a strong planning commission.
Yeah, obviously.
And they drove it for a decade, for 2 decades, and they drove that development,
Do you think they have capacity, this
Yes.
planning commission? Because once I asked, and it's very, it's my personal, so I can relate it. I asked Suleiman Faruqi, what happened to the planning commission? And he immediately asked me to look at the board. Because the reason is, then when I joined planning commission, it was M.M. Ahmed who taught me, who trained me. And now the people who are in the planning commission, it is me who trained them. So the capacity, do you think the capacity is an issue?
So, Tahir Sahab, I believe that capacity can be raised.
Can be raised.
It's about prioritizing things.
All right.
Very few people know that Planning Commission is headed by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, right.
And unless Prime Minister sort of prioritizes the strengthening of Planning Commission as an institution which can guide development, and I'm not saying we need central planning. Of course, provinces like Punjab, Sindh, even KP, I think they have their own good, decent planning and development departments to take care of. But then there are other areas in Pakistan which would require hand-holding, and that's where the role of Planning Commission comes in. So if Prime Minister is the chairperson of the Planning Commission, you have good members from all over Pakistan who are there to lead their sectoral themes. I think this is an institution which holds great potential. It has to work with its provincial partners, the provincial planning and development departments, and this is how you have to go.
Dr. Saab, I don't know, it's my ignorance or I'm preposterous or I don't know. And that is the reason that I think it's a very important question I should ask you. Do you think there should be some constitutional amendment that puts somebody at the front as a face and make them independent of all the governments?
When it comes to development initiatives, one would certainly like that.
Like that.
Because development initiatives should be insulated from politics.
All right.
And I think your point is so true that probably this is why you had formulated a planning commission out of a planning board in 1952.
Yeah, right.
And essentially because this planning commission was above all the ministries.
Yeah, it was.
So
Then.
Then, of course. Many of the line ministers used to report to Deputy Chairman Planning Commission.
Obviously.
Just because they were driving the development agenda. And I think that's the way to go. But I also want to come back to your original question, that Planning Commission cannot do it on its own. Planning Commission has to evolve. Of course, it has to innovate its own model. There are proposals whether Planning Commission could become Secretariat of CCI. It can better serve the Council of Common Interest. It can strengthen it. There could be other models as well. But besides this, there remains an improvement, which is there remains a need for improvement when it comes to interagency coordination. When you are talking about CPEC or a program of this size, or when Saudis come to talk to you about
on refinery,
on refineries,
$8 billion,
yes,
petrochemical complex,
or when Russia comes to you and talks about the North-South pipeline, for example. Now, to handle such projects, interagency coordination, which is 3 or 4 bodies: Planning Commission, Commerce Ministry, FBR, BOI. Unless these 4 are on the same page, you will have cost and time delays, which you continue to face today as well. And while some progress has been made under this government, they have given, for example, the control of tariff policy to Commerce Ministry.
Taking risk of making this program very lengthy, I would just like to ask you one question. It goes to original. It's not perception. As a fact, knows that the IMF delayed the CPEC, slowed down because there was conditionality on loans. Do you think when the Biden is coming, there's a change over there as well, and they are reversing their relationship, going back to the original, to the Iran, for example, and on other things? Do you think there can be some improvement?
Yes, I'm very hopeful, and people with whom we have consulted in the government, they seem hopeful as well.
On this account?
On this account, and because of 3 reasons. One is Pakistan's strengthened role in the past 1 year in Afghan peace process.
All right.
And this is an area where Biden would like to consolidate the progress. Second is the possible reset of China-US ties, in which we have been told by US diplomats and other colleagues that Biden doesn't want to be seen as somebody who is standing against BRI or any other country's ambitions to move into other continents or have development ambitions. Instead, Biden would be focusing on their own version of regional cooperation or their own
Which
version.
is East-West corridor.
That's right. That's right. That's second. And that helps because of
World Bank has done a lot of work on that actually,
they have.
on tariff and other things.
And if President-elect Biden comes with such a plan, Pakistan essentially becomes a beneficiary of that plan as well, being a pivot state, which it is. You cannot have such kinds of visions implemented without pivot states being on board. So you will need that. And third, of course, is that whatever plan President-elect Biden has on Iran, you cannot exclude Pakistan out of it.
Yeah, obviously.
You will need Pakistan by your side to implement whatever plan you come up with. I don't want to preempt anything. So due to these three reasons, I am very hopeful that we could see
Improve
relations between US and Pakistan. I hope that we can capitalize on those because I think in the past we have been slow on demanding the economic gains out of these relationships.
Dr. Sahab, thank you very much. It's very interesting. Actually, that covers the whole ambit of where the Pakistan is going on. It's a piece of history which we are trying to unravel. Thank you very much for being on the program. And with this, we have come to the end of the program. Next week, we'll take another guest and similar programs. Keep watching our program. I'm Tahir Dhindsa and you are watching TD Digital.